So Lamarcus Aldridge, after a long career, is calling it quits because of his irregular heartbeat. It's kind of getting out of hand. So he announced his retirement today, actually. So what does that mean for the Brooklyn Nets right now?
All right, so I think first things first, I want to talk about Lamarcus Aldridge. I think he made a very good decision by retiring right now. I think putting yourself first is definitely more important than any basketball career that you could have, and putting your family first is definitely more important than any basketball career that you could have long term. You feel me? But the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, I think nothing changes for them. The Brooklyn Nets still going to be a juggernaut. The Brooklyn Nets still got Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. So regardless, they're still going to be basically the best, not necessarily the best, but the favorites right now to win the NBA Finals. Now, here's the thing: where it really affects the Brooklyn Nets is defensively in the paint. Lamarcus Aldridge wasn't necessarily an elite defender, but he was the only person that could, legitimately at least some sort of stop the finish from just having a cascade parade line to the paint. I think right now, I mean, your best paint defender is like Blake Griffin, and we all know how bad of a defender Blake Griffin is. Now, of course, they do still have DeAndre Jordan, but I just don't necessarily think they're going to find very good minutes for him because James Harden wants to get to the paint, Kyrie Irving wants to get to the paint, Kevin Durant wants to get to the paint, and if you just got a man like DeAndre Jordan just clogging up the paint, it's not necessarily going to be very good. It was very important for Lamarcus Aldridge to be there because he could be like a sort of kickout option for James Harden, Kyrie, and KD if they're driving to the paint and his man helps off him. He could hit the mid range, he could hit the 3 pointer. But as of right now, I mean, I think the biggest impact is going to have to be defensively in the paint. How are they going to feel it? I mean, I have absolutely no idea. I know Boogie right now is on a 10-day contract with the Clippers. If he gets cut, maybe they could pick Boogie up or something like that, and they could try to stick him in the paint. He could still Boogie right now, even though he's not necessarily anywhere close to where he was, he could still hit the mid range. He could still hit the 3 pointer, and he could defend the paint.
That's a great point. Boogie would give you a lot of what you were going to get from Lamarcus Aldridge as far as like that mid range post up big man production because Lamarcus Aldridge, he wasn't, right now, he wasn't necessarily, known for his rebound or his defense either. I mean, he recently came out and said, geez, that's what I look like on defense. I need to change it up when he saw, like, recording of himself. So I think the biggest impact is just the firepower that you actually would need in Brooklyn. Now, don't get me wrong, Brooklyn has, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. You could put any of us two, on the last two spots and we'll make the finals.
I'm a shooter.
But they haven't been, consistently playing together. Like, James Harden has been out for 10 days. KD just coming back. Kyrie, he's, taking personal PTO days. I mean, when Lamarcus Aldridge is one of those people that you would count on when those three guys don't have it together or when they're not in the lineup. Lamarcus Aldridge can give you some consistent buckets. He was a lot better of a pickup than Blake Griffin was, if we're being honest. Blake Griffin, you're just getting the leftover Lob City Blake Griffin. Whoever that is. So I do agree, Rob. I think that the Nets should still be the favorites to go to the finals, particularly since they're still a top 2 seed, probably going to finish as the number 1 seed in the East. But especially when it comes down to that playoff experience, veteran leadership, a guy who's a good locker room guy, give you consistent buckets, and just an overall good fit with the team. That small ball would have been lethal with Lamarcus Aldridge at the 5, but him out the game, it becomes tougher for the Steve Nash to try to figure out how lineups are going to work and how he's going to move pieces around.
I feel like it does impact the Nets. Some people are saying like he was just like an extra add-on piece, but I feel like he brings that quality to the team that they're going to need if they want to win a championship down the stretch. Because the thing about the Nets, yes, I know they have James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant, and that might really be all you need, but they're really thin. Like they don't have, other than those three, they don't have scores. Don't tell me Blake Griffin is going to pick up the slack when they're out. Obviously, all three of them shouldn't be out the game at the same time, but injuries happen. You guys see now it's just Kyrie Irving playing. James Harden is usually an everyday player type of guy, but he got hurt. Kevin Durant is coming back from injury, and they're giving him
Load management.
Load management. There you go. It's not easy to just go out there and win a championship. I know they're three great players, but Lamarcus Aldridge was definitely something that they needed.
See, here's the thing. I just have a very difficult time saying that the Brooklyn Nets are going to have a tough time competing with anybody offensively. That's just not in my nature. I think the Brooklyn Nets are going to be just fine. I understand. I'm sensitive to the fact that they're not necessarily having the best chemistry together. I think a lot of people kind of compare this team to, of course, the Miami Heat when they first got together. But I think this is a very different situation. The Miami Heat, not necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily include D Wade because even though D Wade was young, he was still playoff tested. LeBron James he didn't necessarily know how to win basketball games, and Chris Bosh barely been to the playoffs. I feel like each one of these guys, each three of these guys, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant, they all had their fair share of playoff success, their fair share of trials and tribulations. So they're going to automatically know what to do in the playoffs when it really comes down to it. I just think that defensively is where they're going to have the problem defending the paint. In the East, we understand what Joel Embiid brings. We talked about this earlier. Joel Embiid, arguably right now, is one of the most dominant paint presence in the NBA. And if you're going to actually want to stop Joel Embiid in the playoffs, it's going to be a very difficult time if you're just going to have Blake Griffin and Jeff Green trying to guard him. So I think because of that, it's probably going to be a little bit different. I think right now, they still, as I said, we talked about it, they're still the favorites. But if they don't necessarily shore up that paint presence, get a body to put on Joel Embiid, get a body to put on Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's going to be a very difficult time in the playoffs, and especially if they get to the finals with teams like I don't even know, like the Lakers. Even if they meet up with a team like the Suns or the Nuggets, it's going to be a very difficult time dealing with those sinners.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think that going into the season or going into that James Harden trade, they already knew that was going to be an issue. They accepted that, and that's when the identity of this team became outscoring everybody. So they didn't care about defense. Otherwise, they really wouldn't have picked up Lamarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, who are not known for defense at all. So I think that much doesn't really change. They do need a paint presence, don't get me wrong, but I think Lamarcus Aldridge is not playing for them anymore. The game plan is still going to be the same. We're going to try to outscore every team that we come into contact with, and that's how they're going to be winning ball games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when it comes to players like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid, their philosophy is going to be threes are greater than twos. So of course you can bang us down in the paint, but we're going to hit you over the head with Kyrie Irving 3, Kevin Durant 3, and James Harden 3, step back 3 from the logo. So it's just going to be how it is.
Yeah, and I think even with or without Lamarcus Aldridge, it's either championship or bust for the Nets. So
absolutely.